You said earlier, God needs us. I wonder, and I asked Paul the same question, does God ever feel alone? If God needs us, does God feel aloneness, or is that just an intellectual thing that I'm trying to apply to God?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great inquiry. So when we talk about God, right, let's get a sentence on the table we said
Not a
earlier.
bearded dude in the sky. That's not what I'm talking about.
I mean, maybe, right? But no, right?
Maybe.
Hey, right? It was well worked out, right? But in others, like, hello. I lived for a couple of years in Salt Lake City, and there's an entire Mormon movie industry.
Yeah.
And so all the pictures of like Jesus and the apostles, they're all super great physiques, perfectly worked out, right? It's the Mormon kind of, they're very, into the embodiment, but bracketing that, probably not a bearded guy in the sky.
Yeah.
So the first thing we know about God is neti neti. We say in the East or in the West, via negativa, which means very simply, the God you don't believe in, I don't believe in either. Or the God you don't believe in doesn't exist. Meaning that small version of the God that when your mother was chasing you and you were 2 years old and 3 years old maybe, and you ran into the bathroom and you locked the door and, she was having a bad day and she banged on the door and said, God's going to get you in there too. That God doesn't exist, right? So that traumatized, painful, right, vision of God that is almost an abusing God, that God doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So we have to let that go. We have to let go and yet I've said to many of my dear friends, in the teaching world around the world, who said to me for many years, don't use the word God. That's too, no, let's use the word God. The word God's important. Yeah. God's holding an essence. It's not enough to say, Atman is Brahman. With all due respect, Atman is Brahman. That is true. It's not enough to say, Bohm's implicate order. That's true. And Mat and Geist. And, there's this whole set of words and the, all these, all that is, we do all these words to avoid saying God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's use the word God. Right? The word God, because it's holding something and we need to clarify it. We need to participate in the evolution of God, meaning feeling, realizing, right, the nature of the divine. But let's use the word God. But first we start the God you don't believe in doesn't exist. That's one. So now two, and let's go tender and slow here. Okay, we good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, we good.
Go for it.
So we can first think of God as the infinity of power. So I'm going to call that, and we're going to go super crazy slow. We're relaxed. We're hanging out. We're in this gorgeous place.
Yeah.
Slow and easy. So in reality, there are three primordial foundational structures that live beneath everything. And, and anyone who's kind of listening now, you're thinking, okay, this is going to be too hard. It's not. It's super clear. So, but just we'll get it slow. So the first one is what we would call third person. Then there's second person, and then there's first person. So what do we mean by that? So third person is science, looking at it, or dharma, the nature of reality, looking at it. Second person, the space between Mark and Josh right now. All right, I'm in love with you. First person, as it lives in me, what lives in me, what's moving through me. Mm. So those are we call those in the interior sciences, the three faces of the divine, the three faces of reality. So for example, let's go to mystical Christianity, which is gorgeous, right? Or to classical Kashmir Shaivism, Hinduism, or to Kabbalah, right? Or to any good reading of evolutionary science. And we'll get the sense of it lives in me, right? That's the tattvam ase. Thou art that. You feel the God force, or you feel love moving through me. I am love in first person. Even before I'm loving a particular person, that's outrageous love. Outrageous love is not in response to a person. It's the love that just moves through me. That's the love that we talked about earlier that moves the sun and the other stars. So there's God in first person, meaning if Josh is alone on an island, right? He's, what was that Tom Hanks movie called? What was that called? Castaway. Castaway. There he is, alone on the island, right? And he's meditating, and he's like, first person's not enough. That's why he leaves the island. Different story, right? But first person is, I'm one of the desert fathers in early Christianity. I'm in the desert. I am feeling right? God in first person is moving in me. So that God that lives in me, that makes me feel like my life is infinitely valuable. It's why I want to survive. Why do I struggle to survive? Because I know my life is valuable. How do I know it lives in me? That's God in first person. God in third person is, oh my God, billions of light years, infinite complexity, gorgeousness beyond all imagination. So love in first person, God in first person lives in me. Third person is all the laws, all the dharma, right? All of the, billions of light years, all of the vast, infinite complexity of not one galaxy, 100 billion galaxies, and then the multiverse, right? Everything, that's God in third person. That vast expanse. So our friend, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he can only access third person. He's real good at third person.
Yeah.
But he forgets that it's God. But separate problem. Carl Sagan was kind of working with that himself. But it's like that vastness, right? That infinite vastness, right? It's not empty. We said it's empty space. Space is not empty. Space is actually, that's just wrong. Oh, what empty space? We're a little speck of Earth and no empty space. It's all forces of allurement. If you think the space between you and your beloved is empty, then there's empty space. Right? All of reality is structures and forces of allurement. So that's God in third person. Now stay with me a second. It gets crazy wild. Crazy wild? Like crazy wild, okay?
Let's go.
So take all of that God in the third person, hundreds of billions of galaxies, multiverse, all of that, sit it on a chair looking directly at you and caring about you with infinite quivering tenderness and unimaginable passion and grace. That's God in the second person. Right? That is the personal face of reality. That is God as the infinite intimate. So third person, God is the infinity of power. Second person, God is the infinity of intimacy. It's like, right? We exiled God to the third person. God's the infinity of power. God is the infinity of power. Yes, science has got that going on beautifully. In the ashram, and I love the ashram, right? Meaning the East, right? Mysticism, we said God's first person, God lives in you. And the best of the mosque, church, and synagogue, Rumi on his best day, God is my friend, second person. But actually what happened in culture is, and we're going like crazy deep, okay? Is that okay? Right? Yeah. What happened in culture is we split the ashram from the church, synagogue, mosque, from the secular academy. The secular academy, third person. Church, synagogue, mosque, deep, right? Second person. Christ loves me. That's true. Second person. But Christ means the infinite intimate. Right? God who loves me so insanely, madly much that she says, nail me on a fucking cross and I'm going to suffer for you, right? And help you transform. That's intense, right? That's second person. That's deep dive second person. First person, right? And it's the God that moves through me. But we did in cultures, we split those three from each other. Actually, first, second, and third is the structure of reality. God is God in first person, lives in me, as me, and through me uniquely. God is third person, right? Carl Sagan, right? The vast, wondrous cosmos. It's not empty. It's filled with allurement. And second person, I'm madly in love with you. I get to be delighted by you, right? I have that sense of I'm only really alive if I'm not just love, I'm in a love story. And a love story has conversations, and it has love notes, and it has outrageous love letters and outrageous love notes. So wow. So what we just did is what we just did now in these sentences, we literally resold reality.
Whoa. If you enjoyed that one you just saw, you will love this one on the screen. Click it and enjoy.